Don't touch my laptop. You don't have money, you have problems. Now shut up and do what I say.
At the ATM, my balance showed $0. My dill joked fees. Then the bank replayed her $157K wire. The ATM screen blinked at me. $0.00. I stood in the Safeway parking lot with the receipt still warm between my fingers. Account balance, $0. Available balance, $0. I'd come to withdraw $60 for groceries. The numbers on that paper didn't look like low. They looked like a mistake, but the screen didn't stutter. It didn't apologize. The screen said 0, not low, 0. I folded the receipt and drove home with my hands steady on the steering wheel, like steadiness could change math. My daughter-in-law was in my kitchen when I walked in, standing at my counter, making herself tea in one of my mugs. The ATM said I had $0, I told her. She looked up from the kettle and smiled. Patient, almost amused. Oh, bank fees, Mom. You know how they are. Then she laughed, light and easy, like I'd asked about the weather. I needed you to understand something about that laugh, about the way she said fees like a life could disappear into paperwork. And I should nod and move on. If your family has ever treated your money like a shared account, stay with me. Because I didn't need revenge, I needed a record. And the bank had one. Before I continue, make sure you are subscribed to my channel and write in the comments where are you watching this video from. We love knowing how far our stories are traveling. I needed to go back 3 years, May 2022. That was when it started, even though I didn't have a name for it then. None of us did at the beginning. Harold had his first stroke that month. The doctors called it small, the kind of word that makes you feel guilty for being scared. But it left his left side weaker, and it turned our front steps into a daily negotiation. He needed help with medications, appointments, and the little tasks that stack up until your whole day belongs to them. Our son, Michael, called the day after we came home from the hospital. His wife, Rachel, was with him. She'd just left her job at a marketing firm. They lived 15 minutes away, in the newer development past the highway. Let Rachel take care of the pharmacy runs, Michael said. You've got enough to worry about with Dad. It did make sense. I was tired. Harold needed me in the house. So one Tuesday afternoon, I handed Rachel my debit card and told her the PIN, Harold's birthday backward, and asked her to pick up his prescriptions from the CVS on Maple Street, just that once, just to help. She came back 20 minutes later with a white paper bag and a receipt, and she set both on my counter like she was filing something away for later. She smiled at me the way you smile at someone you're teaching something new. You should let me handle this from now on, she said. It's easier. You can focus on Dad. It sounded reasonable. I said, okay. I handed her my debit card just for the pharmacy. The pharmacy trips became grocery runs. The grocery runs became bill payments. Within a month, she was handling the electric bill, the water, and the property tax escrow. She showed me a budgeting app on her phone, everything color-coded. Green meant paid, red meant overdue. Everything was green. See, she said, all handled. And I wanted to believe her, because believing her meant I could put my energy back where it belonged. On Harold, on the way his hands shook when he tried to button his shirts, on the way he apologized for needing help, as if illness was a character flaw. Then came the phone. My old flip phone wouldn't hold a charge, and Rachel decided that meant it was time to upgrade my whole life. She drove me to the Verizon store, helped me pick a smartphone, and set it up at my kitchen table like I was 8 years old. She installed the banking app, email, something called two-factor authentication. I'll link it to mine, she said, tapping the screen. That way, if you get weird alerts, I'll see them too. Scammers target seniors, Mom. This is just being smart. She turned my notifications into her notifications. She added her fingerprint as a backup, just in case. She changed my passcode to something she said was stronger, then wrote it down on a sticky note she peeled off and slid into her purse before I could read it. After that, every time my phone buzzed, I found myself looking at her face before I looked at the screen. The mail came next. One morning in late July, she arrived with a stack of envelopes, my name on every one, and held them up like proof of a bad habit. "You're still getting paper statements," she said, flipping through them. "Bank, credit card, utilities. It's not secure. Anyone could steal these from your mailbox." She opened her laptop at my table and enrolled everything in paperless billing. Bank, credit card, utilities, one confirmation after another. I can still hear the little electronic chime when each website said enrolled, as if that sound meant safety. "There," she said. "Now it all goes to email. I'll forward you anything important." Paperless was easier, she said. I said nothing. By the time Harold died in January 2023, Rachel had her fingerprint on my phone, my email password, and a map of my life, which bills pulled from which account, which days deposits landed, which names belonged on what. She knew the rhythm of my money the way I knew the rhythm of my own breathing. She even brought me a form one afternoon and said it was just in case, adding herself as an authorized user at my bank so she could help if I ever got locked out. The form had First Community Bank's logo at the top and my name printed in clean block letters next to a line for my signature. She pointed to the line like she'd done it 100 times. "Just a precaution," she said, "so I can deposit checks if you're sick, so I can talk to them if there's fraud. You don't want to be alone in this, Mom." I signed because Harold was in the recliner behind me, asleep with the television on low, and the house felt fragile, like one wrong argument could crack it. Michael thought it was wonderful. He'd stop by on Sundays and find Rachel at my kitchen table with her laptop open, keeping everything in order. "You're so lucky, Mom," he said once. "Not everyone has someone willing to do this." He kissed my forehead the way you kiss a child. "Rachel's got it handled," he said. He kissed my forehead like I was already gone. I didn't say what I wanted to say, that I'd been paying bills since before he was born, that I'd managed a household budget through 2 recessions and Harold's layoff in 1987, that I still kept receipts in a labeled folder and balanced my checkbook out of habit, not necessity. I didn't say any of that. I just smiled and let him believe his wife was rescuing me. But I did know my numbers. I had always known my numbers. When Harold and I got married in 1970, I kept a composition notebook with every expense written down in pencil: rent, groceries, gas, the electric bill. Over the years, I adjusted for inflation and new technology, but I never abandoned the habit of knowing. Knowing was how we stayed afloat. By the time Harold died, our house was paid off, a small 3-bedroom ranch we'd bought decades earlier. My pension from the school district arrived each month. Harold's survivor benefit arrived on its own schedule. His old retirement money sat in a separate account I rarely touched. I wasn't flashy, and I wasn't reckless. I wasn't rich, but I wasn't helpless either. 2 months before the morning at the Safeway ATM, the last paper statement I'd managed to see from First Community Bank showed just over $157,000 sitting across my checking and savings. After that, the envelopes stopped coming. The mailbox stayed full of grocery flyers and charity appeals. And I told myself the same thing I'd told myself about everything else. Rachel said it was easier, so I said nothing until easier finally showed me its number, and it was 0. That night after the ATM, I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed and ran the numbers in my head the way I'd been doing since 1970, $1,500 on the first, $1,100 on the third Wednesday. Property tax escrow, $125 a month. Utilities, insurance, groceries, gas. I'd been tracking it all for decades. The balance should have been somewhere around $157,000, give or take a few hundred. I'd seen it in black and white. The last paper statement had arrived in August. I remembered the day exactly because it came on a Saturday, and I'd opened it at the kitchen table with my morning coffee. Checking $11,843.16. Savings $64,211.79. The Fidelity transfer account $81,600. Total liquid assets $157,654.95. That was August 15th. September's statement never came. Neither did October's. The last paper statement was August. It was October. And somewhere in the space between those months, my life had been rewritten without my signature. I got out of bed at 6, went to the kitchen, and opened the drawer where I kept my files. The manila folder labeled Bank Statements sat exactly where it always sat, behind Utilities and in front of Medical. I flipped through January, February, March, April, May, June, July, August, nothing after August. I checked the mail pile on the counter, nothing. I checked the recycling bin in the garage, thinking maybe I'd thrown them out by accident, though I'd never done that in 50 years of managing paper. Nothing. I checked the drawer under the microwave, where Rachel sometimes put things she said I didn't need to worry about. Coupons, flyers, subscription renewals, no bank statements. I sat down at the table with the August statement in my hands and stared at the numbers until they blurred. $157,654.95. The checking account alone had nearly $12,000 in it, enough to cover months of expenses, even if my pension stopped coming. Money like that didn't evaporate. It didn't vanish into fees. And as the morning light pushed into my kitchen, I felt another pressure under the fear: time. If something had happened in September, I was already weeks into whatever window banks had for fixing it. I didn't know the rule yet, but I could feel the clock. Rachel came by that morning around 10, the way she often did on Tuesdays. She had a key. She let herself in and walked into the kitchen carrying groceries she said she'd picked up for me. "Thought you could use some fresh fruit," she said, unloading apples and bananas. The Honey Crisps were on sale. I watched her move around my kitchen. She knew where everything went. The fruit bowl by the window, the bread on top of the fridge. She'd been doing this for months. "I need to look at my bank account," I said. She glanced up and smiled. "Sure, Mom. What do you need to check?" "The balance, the statements. I haven't gotten any mail from the bank since August." "Oh, that's because we switched to paperless, remember? Everything's online now." She pulled her laptop out, set it on the table, and opened it. Her fingers moved fast. Click, click, password autofilled like the machine already knew her. "Here," she said, angling the screen toward me, but not quite close enough. "See? Everything's fine." I leaned forward, trying to read the balance line. The font was small, and the screen was turned just a few degrees away from my eyes. Close enough to perform honesty, far enough to keep me from it. For half a second, I caught a line that didn't belong in my life. A heading near the middle of the page, something like outgoing transfer, and a date that made my stomach tighten. "It says there's a processing error," Rachel said quickly, as if she could talk over what I'd just seen. "Happens sometimes when the bank updates their systems. Probably just a glitch. I'll call them later and get it sorted out." I reached for the laptop. She pulled it back, just slightly. "Let me call them now," I said. "I want to know what the actual balance is." "Mom, it's fine, really. These glitches happen all the time with online banking. That's why I handle it, remember? So you don't have to stress about this technical stuff. Her hand rested on the laptop, fingers spread across the keyboard like a lid. I'd like to see the full statement, I said. Can you pull up September and October? The system's being weird right now. I'll print everything out for you tonight when it's working again, okay? I promise. Then she closed the laptop, clean, final, before I could see the screen again. Something shifted in my chest. Not anger yet, not panic, just a cold, clear understanding that something was very wrong and I was being managed. Managed like a child who couldn't be trusted with the truth. I'm going to the bank, I said. Rachel looked up, eyebrows raised, that patient smile still pinned to her face. You don't need to do that. I told you, I'll handle it. I'll get everything straightened out this afternoon. I'd like to speak to someone in person. Mom, she sighed, gentle but firm. You don't drive anymore, remember? We talked about this after that little accident in the grocery store parking lot, and I've got to pick up the kids from school at 3, so I can't take you today. How about tomorrow? We'll go together. I'll help you explain everything to the teller. I hadn't driven in 6 months. Rachel had suggested I stop after I'd backed into a post in the Trader Joe's lot. Barely a scratch on the bumper, but she'd made it sound like I'd nearly caused a catastrophe. She'd said it wasn't safe anymore, that my reflexes weren't what they used to be, that she'd be happy to drive me wherever I needed to go. I'd agreed because it seemed reasonable at the time, because I didn't want to be a burden, because I didn't want to be difficult. But the bank was less than a mile away, straight down Elm Street. I'd walked that route in every season. When Harold and I moved here in 1978, I'd walked it, pushing Michael in a stroller. I'd walked it to work at the elementary school before I bought my first car. I'd walked it after Harold's funeral, needing air, needing to prove I could still put one foot in front of the other. I could walk there now. I stood up from the table, went to the coat closet by the front door, pulled out my jacket, the navy one with pockets deep enough for my wallet and keys. Where are you going? Rachel asked, her voice a little sharper now. For a walk, I said. It's almost lunchtime. You should eat something first. I brought turkey from the deli. Let me make you a sandwich. I'll eat when I get back. Mom, it's cold out. And you didn't sleep well last night, I can tell. You look tired. Why don't you rest for a bit? I zipped my jacket and opened the front door. And as the cold air hit my face, my phone buzzed in my pocket. Once, then again, like someone was trying to pull me back inside. I didn't look. I walked. No permission needed. The walk took 15 minutes. First Community Bank sat on the corner of Elm and 3rd, the same low brick building it had been since I opened my first account there in 1981. I pushed through the glass door and told the woman at the front desk, I need to speak with a manager. She picked up the phone, spoke quietly, then smiled. Mrs. Chen will be right with you. Would you like to have a seat? I sat by the window with my hands folded in my lap, steady on purpose. 5 minutes later, a woman in her 50s came out, with reading glasses on a chain and a calm, practiced face. Mrs. Anderson, I'm Patricia Chen, branch manager. You're having an issue with your account? I needed to see my account history, I said. Going back to August? She led me into her office. The air smelled faintly of printer toner and coffee. She logged into her computer and asked for my account number. I had it memorized, I told her, and when I said it out loud, something in me stiffened, like muscle memory refusing to be erased. Her fingers moved over the keyboard. Click, click. A pause while the system loaded. Then her eyes shifted, scanning down the screen in a way that made my stomach tighten. Mrs. Anderson, she said carefully, when was the last time you personally accessed your online banking? August. I had a paper statement. After that, everything went paperless. My daughter-in-law set it up. I see, she clicked again. And have you authorized any large transfers recently? My mouth went dry. No, what transfers? She turned the monitor toward me. At first it looked normal, deposits, withdrawals, auto payments for utilities. A life reduced to line items. Then the list hit September, and my eyes caught on a single entry like a bruise. September 15th, wire transfer, external account, $157,000. The number sat there on the screen like it belonged, like it was just another Tuesday. But it wasn't a Tuesday. It was everything. The word fees came back to me in Rachel's voice, light, joking, and suddenly it didn't sound like a joke. It sounded like a cover. I didn't authorize that, I said. My voice sounded far away, as if it belonged to someone braver. Mrs. Chen pulled the monitor back and opened another panel. The wire was initiated online using your login credentials, she said. It shows verification with a one-time code sent to the phone number on file ending in 4793. Is that still your number? Yes, I said. But I never got a code. I never saw anything about a wire transfer. She clicked to another screen. This shows the device used to initiate the transfer, an iPhone registered to the account in July. I don't have an iPhone, I said. I have a Samsung. My daughter-in-law has an iPhone. Mrs. Chen stopped typing. She picked up a pen and wrote something down on a notepad, the way people do when they're building a record that might outlast a conversation. Then she looked at me directly. Mrs. Anderson, I need to ask you plainly. Do you believe someone accessed your account without your permission? Yes. And do you believe you know who? My daughter-in-law, I said. Rachel Anderson. She's been helping since my husband got sick. She set up paperless statements. She has her fingerprint on my phone. She knows my passwords. She brought me a form last December and told me it was just in case. I signed it. Mrs. Chen nodded once. When you say a form, do you mean you added her to the signature card? Authorized access? I believe so, I said. She called it an authorized user. That can give someone access to assist with transactions, Mrs. Chen said carefully, but it doesn't give anyone the right to move funds of this size without your knowledge or consent. A transfer moving nearly your entire balance, especially with you unaware, raises serious concerns. This may be financial exploitation. I stared at the screen again. The date, the amount, the clean certainty of it. That's not my signature on any wire authorization, I said. Mrs. Chen's expression softened. Not pity, something closer to recognition. Here's what we can do, she said. We'll file a fraud claim today. Our compliance team will investigate the wire, the access history, and the device logs. If they determine it was unauthorized, we can attempt a recall, but the receiving bank may not cooperate, especially if the funds were moved again. How long does that take? I asked. Investigation can take up to 30 days, she said. A recall, if possible, can take longer, 30 to 60. And there's also timing. With wires, there are dispute windows. The sooner we start, the better. I did the math without meaning to. The wire was September 15th. It was late October now. Time wasn't just passing, it was closing. Mrs. Chen slid a form across the desk and pointed to the signature line. We'll document everything you're telling me. We'll open a case. And I strongly recommend you speak with an elder law attorney. An attorney. The word landed heavy, but it also landed clean. It meant I wasn't imagining this. It meant there were steps. I signed, the printer in her office whirred to life, spitting page after page with the relentless confidence of a machine that didn't care about family. When I left the bank, I carried a folder pressed against my side. Inside was a wire confirmation, date, amount, routing, and receiving bank. a device access history showing an iPhone logged into my account repeatedly from July into mid-September, a fraud claim form with a case number, a business card for the compliance officer assigned to the file, and tucked inside a sticky note in Mrs. Chen's handwriting with a name and number. Margaret Brennan, elder law attorney. "She's good," Mrs. Chen had said, pressing the note into my hand. "Call her today and try not to tip off your daughter-in-law yet. Let us move carefully." I walked home slowly. The October air had teeth. Leaves scraped the sidewalk in small dry circles. When I got back, Rachel's car was gone. I locked the door, sat at my kitchen table, and spread the folder contents out in front of me like evidence. I read the wire confirmation again, slower this time. Wire amount, $157,000. Originating account, mine. Receiving bank, listed in black ink. Receiving account holder, Rachel M. Anderson. Not Rachel and Michael. Not a joint household account. Not something we'd agreed on together. Just her name. Just hers. I called the number on the sticky note. Margaret Brennan answered on the third ring. Crisp voice, no softness. The kind that didn't waste time on denial. I told her my name and that Patricia Chen at First Community had given me her number. "How much are we talking about with mine?" "Oh," she asked. $157,000, I said. "Wire transfer, September 15th. I found out today." "Who initiated it?" "My daughter-in-law," I said. "She has authorized access. She's been managing my finances since my husband died." "Do you live with her?" "No, I live alone. She has a key." I heard typing on her end. "Can you come in tomorrow, 2 o'clock? Bring everything the bank gave you, statements you've kept, any forms you signed. I'll be there." "And Mrs. Anderson," she said, her voice sharpening slightly, "don't discuss this with your daughter-in-law. Not yet. Don't warn her. We need to move carefully. Understand?" I understood. I hung up. The folder stayed open on my table. The wire confirmation, the device log. They had logged in from her phone, repeatedly. And for the first time since that ATM receipt, I didn't feel confused. I felt certain. Pay for a guy. Execution. The next afternoon, I drove to Margaret Brennan's office in Brookfield. I found my car keys in the drawer under the microwave, exactly where I'd left them 6 months earlier, the day Michael suggested I stop driving for a while. Back then, it had sounded like care. Today, it felt like control. The engine turned over on the first try. I avoided the highway and took surface streets, hands steady on the wheel, eyes on every stop sign. 23 minutes. Her office was on the second floor of a gray-sided building, Suite 204. The sign on the door read, "Brennan and Associates, Elder Law." Inside, the air smelled like paper and toner, quiet, purposeful. Margaret stood when I walked in. 60, maybe, reading glasses on a chain, firm handshake. "Mrs. Anderson, please sit." I sat and pulled the folder from my purse. She spread the contents across her desk in a neat line, the wire confirmation, the device access log, the fraud claim form with a case number stamped in the corner, the branch manager's card. She read each page once, then she read them again. "Walk me through how she got access," she said. I told her the timeline, the way you tell a doctor's symptoms. Plain, chronological, ashamed you didn't come sooner. Harold's stroke in May 2022, the first pharmacy run, the debit card, the PIN, the way help expanded, groceries, bills, passwords. July's phone upgrade, alerts forwarded to Rachel's number, her fingerprint added as a backup, paperless enrollment handled at my kitchen table, the authorized access form in December, presented as a safety measure, just in case. Margaret's pen moved across a yellow legal pad, small and precise. "And you never gave her explicit permission to initiate a wire transfer," she said. "No," I told her. I didn't even know a wire transfer was something you could do from a phone. Most people don't, she said, and tapped the device log. 17 logins in 2 months. That's not paying bills. That's monitoring, watching your balance. She circled the line on the wire confirmation. September 15th. Amount $157,000. Receiving bank, Wells Fargo. Receiving account holder, Rachel M. Anderson. $157,000 isn't a misunderstanding, Margaret said. It's a decision someone made for you. My hands stayed folded in my lap. I didn't want them to shake. What do we do? I asked. We build a record, she said, and we move carefully. She drafted a demand letter to Rachel and Michael. Certified mail. Return receipt requested. 10 business days to return the full amount. Preserve records. Future communication through counsel. If they refused, we escalated. Civilly and, if necessary, through a criminal referral for financial exploitation. Will it work? I asked. It depends on who she becomes when she realizes there's a paper trail, Margaret said. If she returns the money, this can end quietly. If she doesn't, the letter still matters. It shows you acted immediately once you discovered it. What if she claims I agreed? I asked. Then she needs proof, Margaret said. Something specific. Written authorization for that transfer. A message from you approving it. Something contemporaneous. Not I was helping. And the device log helps you. If you truly authorized it, why did it come from an iPhone that isn't yours? She slid a fee agreement across the desk. Retainer, $5,000, $350 an hour after that. For a moment, I saw the old cushion in my checking account. $12,000, the amount I kept because life doesn't ask permission before it breaks something. $5,000 was nearly half of that. But the ATM had already shown me what saving money looked like when you waited too long. I'll write you a check, I said. Margaret nodded once and kept moving. I'm also contacting Adult Protective Services, she said. They can open a case and document what happened. You're not asking for drama. You're asking for protection. I swallowed. I don't want to send my son's wife to jail. I understand, she said, but you also don't want to lose your life savings. Right now, we document. What happens next depends on her response and what the bank confirms. She printed the demand letter and read the key paragraphs aloud, the amount, the date, the deadline, and she slid the envelope into my folder. I'll mail this today, she said, certified. Once she signs for it, the clock starts. Then she paused, pen hovering. Where are you staying tonight? She asked. At home, I said. Rachel has a key, Margaret said, and she's about to receive a letter accusing her of taking $157,000. People can get unpredictable when they realize you've stopped being quiet. Do you have somewhere else you can stay? I thought of Linda Huang, 2 houses down, the kind of neighbor who noticed things without turning them into gossip. I can stay with a friend, I said. Good, Margaret said. Pack a bag. Don't tell Rachel where you're going. Don't argue. Don't explain. Let everything go through me. That night, I brought 1 suitcase to Linda's, a change of clothes, my medications, the folder of bank documents, my phone on silent. Linda took me in without questions. I told her I was having work done on the house and needed a quiet night. She didn't pry. She made up the guest room and left a glass of water on the nightstand. Rachel called 6 times the first day. I didn't answer. 1 voicemail came through anyway, her voice tight and bright. Mom, I got a strange letter from some lawyer. I don't understand. Can you call me back? I deleted it. The second day Michael called. His message was longer, softer, worse. Mom, what's happening? Rachel's upset. You're accusing her of stealing? That doesn't make sense. She's been helping you. Please call me back. I didn't. By the 3rd day, the silence felt less like fear and more like control. For the first time in months, I wasn't reacting to them. They were reacting to me. That afternoon, the bank's compliance officer called. I was sitting at Linda's kitchen table, my folder open in front of me, like a second-place setting. "Mrs. Anderson," he said, "this is Stephen Reyes with First Community Bank. I'm assigned to your fraud investigation, case number 2024 FR10847. Do you have a few minutes to confirm details?" Yes. His questions were simple, but I could hear the structure behind them, each answer becoming a line in a report. "Did you personally authorize a wire transfer of $157,000 on September 15th? No. Did you give anyone permission to initiate that transfer on your behalf? No. Have you shared your online banking credentials with anyone? My daughter-in-law set up my phone in July," I said. She had authorized access for basic account help, but I never authorized wire transfers. I heard typing on his end. "Based on our preliminary review," he said, "we're treating this as unauthorized activity. The transfer was initiated from an iPhone 13 Pro that does not match your usual access pattern, and the access history supports your claim." My throat tightened. "What does that mean?" "It means we moved quickly," he said. "We notified the receiving bank and requested action on the destination account. We also filed the required reports for suspected elder exploitation." I held my breath. "As of this morning," he said, "those funds are frozen." I closed my eyes, not returned, not yet, but stopped. "We've frozen the receiving account pending investigation," he said. And for the first time since Rachel laughed and called it fees, something finally stopped moving. On the 8th day, Margaret called. Rachel's attorney responded, she said. "They're requesting a meeting. Tomorrow, 2 o'clock, my office, you, me, Rachel, Michael, and her counsel. Are you willing?" "Yes," I said. "Good. I'll handle the talking. You just answer truthfully when I ask you questions?" I drove to Brookfield the next afternoon, suite 204. Margaret met me in the waiting area, reading glasses already on, a file tucked under her arm. "They're in the conference room," she said quietly. "Rachel brought an attorney from San Jose. Before we go in, understand this may get uncomfortable. Her counsel will try to reframe this as a misunderstanding. He'll suggest you were confused." "I could handle it," I said, and I meant it. Margaret opened the door. Rachel sat on the far side of the table, a man in a gray suit beside her. Michael sat next to Rachel. He looked up when I walked in, face pale, strained, as if he'd been awake all night without admitting why. "Mom," he said, starting to stand. "Please sit, Michael," Margaret said, polite, firm, the kind of tone that didn't invite argument. I sat across from them. The chair was cold under my palms. A pitcher of water sat untouched in the center of the table. No one reached for it. Margaret opened her briefcase and set a thick folder on the table with a soft, heavy sound. Paper meeting wood, like a gavel without the theatrics. Rachel's attorney spoke first. "Miss Brennan, I'm Mr. Kaplan, representing Rachel Anderson. We're here to clarify what we believe is a misunderstanding regarding a September transaction." Margaret didn't react. She simply arranged documents in front of her, as if she were laying out place settings. "Let's establish facts," she said. "On September 15th, $157,000 was wire transferred from my client's account to a Wells Fargo account in the name of Rachel M. Anderson. Not joint, not household. Rachel's personal account. Do you dispute that?" Mr. Kaplan glanced at Rachel. "We don't dispute the transaction occurred," he said. "We dispute the characterization that it was unauthorized." "I see," Margaret said, and slid the wire confirmation across the table until it stopped in front of him. "This wire was initiated online at 3:47 p.m. using my client's credentials. The bank's device identifier shows it was initiated from an iPhone associated with Miss Anderson's access pattern, not Mrs. Anderson's." Rachel leaned forward, voice quick. I was helping her move the money into a safer place. Mom asked me to. She said she was scared about scams, about banks failing. She wanted it moved. I looked at her. I kept my face still because I'd learned that anything emotional would be used against me. I never said that, I said. You did, Rachel insisted. In August, you were upset about something on the news. Michael stared at his wife, like he was trying to match her words to the woman he thought he married. Rachel, he said slowly, you told me Mom wanted this. She did, Rachel said, too fast. Margaret didn't argue with Rachel. She argued with paper. She pulled out the device access log and placed it beside the wire confirmation. This is the bank's access history, Margaret said. It shows Miss Anderson's device accessed Mrs. Anderson's online banking 17 times between July 23rd and September 16th. 17 separate logins. Mr. Kaplan shifted in his seat. My client had authorization to access the account, he said. She was an authorized user. Authorized to assist, Margaret said. Not authorized to move nearly the entire balance into an account with only her name on it. Then Margaret turned slightly toward me, voice steady. Mrs. Anderson, she said, did you give Rachel permission to wire $157,000 into an account that you could not access? No, I said. Did you ask her to wire $157,000 on September 15th? No? Did you have any knowledge that this transfer occurred until you saw an ATM balance of 0 on October 22nd? No. The room went quiet for a beat, quiet enough that I could hear someone's fingernail tap once against a glass. Margaret turned back to Mr. Kaplan. My client's paper statements stopped after July, she said. Her banking alerts were routed away from her direct view. Access occurred repeatedly without her informed involvement. And then the transfer moved virtually her entire liquid savings into Miss Anderson's personal account. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. This is not a misunderstanding, she said. This is financial exploitation. Rachel's face flushed. I was protecting her, she snapped. She's 74. She doesn't understand online banking. She doesn't know about scams. By moving her money into your account? Margaret asked. It was temporary, Rachel said. I was going to move it back after I set up something better. Margaret slid one more page onto the table, plain, printed, stamped with the bank's case header. This is a preliminary trace from the bank, she said. Within days of the wire, significant sums were withdrawn or moved onward. The bank flagged it as inconsistent with my client's history. Mr. Kaplan's hand lifted slightly, as if to block the page from being read too closely. My client is not obligated to discuss her personal spending in this forum. She isn't, Margaret agreed. But the investigation will, and if the funds aren't returned, this doesn't stay a private family meeting. Michael's eyes had dropped to the papers. His face changed as he read, confusion giving way to something sharper. Rachel, he said quietly, what is this? Rachel's gaze flicked to him, then away. Michael, I can explain. You told me Mom agreed, he said, voice tightening. You told me she asked you to do it? She did. She's sitting right here, he said, and she's saying she didn't. The words landed exactly where they were supposed to, between them, not on me. Rachel pushed her chair back hard enough that it scraped. I don't have to sit here and be accused of stealing, she said. I spent 3 years managing her bills, driving her places, doing everything because you were too busy to notice she was struggling. Sit down, Miss Anderson, Margaret said, calm as a metronome. No, Rachel said, and grabbed her bag. We're leaving. Mr. Kaplan stood with her, smoothing his suit, as if the meeting had ended on his terms. Miss Brennan will be in touch regarding settlement discussions. Margaret didn't chase them. She didn't plead. She simply said, "Your client has a deadline under the demand letter to return the remaining funds in full. If she doesn't, we proceed with the next steps." Rachel reached the door. For a second, I thought she might turn back and give me something, an apology, an excuse, even anger that sounded human. She gave me nothing. She stood up and walked out. She didn't apologize. The door closed. Michael stayed seated with his hands over his face. His breathing sounded wrong, too shallow, like someone trying not to fall apart in front of witnesses. "I didn't know," he said, voice breaking. "Mom, I swear I didn't know." I believed him, not because I wanted to, but because the shock in his voice was real. He'd been managed too, just in a different direction. "I know," I said. Margaret gathered the documents back into her folder, the paper sliding into place with small, decisive sounds. "Michael," she said, "your mother has been clear she wants her funds returned. What happens after that, family-wise, is not something the law can fix, but the money must be returned." Michael nodded without looking up. I stood. My legs felt steady. My hands didn't shake. "I'm going home," I said. Margaret walked me to the elevator. "You did exactly what you needed to," she said. "You stayed calm. You answered the questions. You didn't let her make it emotional." "I didn't do anything," I said. "You showed up," Margaret said. "That's more than most people manage after being told they're confused for years." The elevator doors opened. "And if she returns it?" I asked. "Then you decide what access anyone gets to you again," Margaret said. "Not just to your money, to your life." I drove back toward Linda's house. Not mine, not yet. Not until I knew who still had keys and what they'd do when they realized I'd taken them back. Rachel had walked out. No apology, just the sound of a door closing on the version of me she thought would stay quiet. Rachel returned the money on Thursday afternoon. Margaret called me with her work voice, the one that meant she'd already read every line before she dialed. "They wired it back," she said. "Just under $140. I sat down hard on the edge of Linda's guest bed, phone pressed to my ear. "How much?" I asked. "About $140,000, she said. "Not the full 157. Some of it's gone, but most of it came back." Gone, not evaporated into fees. Gone in the only way money goes when someone else decides it belongs to them. "She signed an agreement," Margaret continued. "She admits no wrongdoing, but she agrees not to fight the return of funds and to cease contact with you. No calls, no visits, no messages through third parties. In exchange, you agree not to initiate further action unless she violates the terms. APS will note restitution and reduced risk." "Is it over?" I asked. "On paper," Margaret said. "As much as it can be. Emotionally, that's up to you." The next morning, I went to the bank. Mrs. Chen was waiting for me in her office, like she'd been expecting me for years, not days. She pulled up my account on her computer and turned the screen so I could see it. No angled monitor this time, no tiny font held just out of reach. My balance was back to 6 figures. 140,000 and change. It wasn't what I'd started with, but it wasn't zero. "We removed Rachel Anderson as an authorized user," Mrs. Chen said. "New online credentials, new security questions. 2-factor codes will go only to your phone." She slid a folder across the desk. New debit cards. A sealed envelope with a new PIN. Printed instructions, simple enough to follow without anyone helping. "I recommend a new account entirely," she added. "New account number, fresh start. We can move everything today." I thought about my old account like an old lock, worn by familiar hands, including hands that should never have touched it. "Yes," I said. It took about an hour. New checking, new savings, new account numbers. The balances transferred electronically while Mrs. Chen watched the screen and I watched her watch it. When it was done, she printed a statement and slid it across the desk like it mattered, which it did. "Old account closes today," she said. "Anything that tries to hit it after this gets rejected." I folded the paper once, then again, and put it in my purse. Mrs. Chen's expression softened, not pity, recognition. "Mrs. Anderson," she said, "what happened to you happens more often than people think. You did the right thing. You came in when you saw something wrong. You didn't wait. You didn't talk yourself out of it." I stared at the printed balance. The numbers looked almost ordinary now, which was the strangest part. "Not everyone gets it back," I said. "No," she agreed, "not everyone." I walked out of that bank with my own access restored. Not all, enough. I drove home, this time not to Linda's, to my house. The one Harold and I bought in 1978. The one I raised Michael in. The one Rachel had walked into with a key I gave her because I thought it meant family. I sat in my driveway for a full minute, engine off, hands on the steering wheel, listening to the silence inside my own car. Then I called a locksmith. He came that afternoon, young man, blue uniform, toolbox that rattled when he set it down on my porch. The sound of metal tools against plastic felt like a promise. He changed the locks on the front door, the back door, and the side door into the garage. The price was simple, clean, and worth every penny. When he handed me 3 new keys, they were bright brass, sharp-edged, untouched by anyone else's pocket. I kept one. I put one in the kitchen drawer, where I kept spare batteries and the microwave manual, the drawer Rachel had used like it was hers. And I put the 3rd key in an envelope and wrote Michael's name on the front. I didn't mail it immediately. I wanted to be sure I meant it. Michael called 2 days later, Sunday afternoon. I was in the garden pulling weeds, hands in the dirt like I needed to touch something real. "Mom," he said, "can I come see you?" "Just you?" I asked. A pause. "Just me." He arrived an hour later and stood in my doorway like he didn't know if he was allowed to cross it. We sat at the kitchen table, the same table where Rachel had closed her laptop, the same table where she'd smiled and called it fees. "I didn't know," he said. His voice sounded tight, scraped raw. "I swear, Mom, I didn't know what she was doing." I believed him, not because it made things easier, because the shock in his face didn't look rehearsed. "I believe you," I said. He stared down at his hands. "She told me you wanted help. She showed me that authorized access form and said you asked her to handle everything." "I signed it because she told me it was for emergencies," I said. "In case I got sick. In case I got locked out." "I know," he whispered. "I know that now." He rubbed his face like he was trying to wipe off the last 3 years. "We're separating," he said. "I told her I can't be married to someone who would do that to my mother." Relief rose in me, and guilt rose with it, and exhaustion covered both like a blanket. "I'm sorry," I said, because I didn't have a better sentence for what families become when they fracture. "You didn't do anything wrong," he said quickly. "I'm sorry I didn't see it." We sat in silence for a moment, the kind that wasn't empty, just full of everything we couldn't fix in one afternoon. Then I stood and went to the drawer. I brought back the envelope. "The locks are changed," I said, and set it on the table. "Rachel doesn't have a key anymore, but you can, if you want it." He held the envelope like it weighed more than it did. "Can I still come by?" he asked. "On Sundays, maybe?" I thought about what trust looks like after it breaks. Not restored overnight, not declared, built, small and careful. "Yes," I said, "Sundays are good." And I told my son the boundary out loud, the line that made my life mine again. "You're welcome," I said. "She is not." 3 weeks later, a letter arrived from Adult Protective Services. A case number on the top, a few plain sentences, restitution noted, risk reduced, no further action at this time. I filed it in the folder with everything else: the wire confirmation, the device logs, the new account paperwork, the agreement, evidence, proof that I hadn't imagined it, proof that I wasn't confused, I was careful, and I was still here. 6 months passed. I fell into a routine that didn't require anyone's permission. On Sundays, Michael came over for coffee. We sat at my kitchen table and talked about small things: his new apartment, the cases he was working on, the tomato plants I'd started again in the backyard. We didn't talk about Rachel. He didn't ask, and I didn't offer. The divorce moved through the courts on its own timeline. That was all I needed to know. Linda stayed in my week like a steady stitch. Tuesday mornings, coffee at her kitchen table. Friday afternoons, a slow walk around the neighborhood. She never asked for details. She just showed up, the way people do when they understand that safety sometimes looks like silence and company instead of questions. Once a month, I went to First Community Bank. Mrs. Chen always smiled when she saw me come in. Sometimes we chatted about nothing: the weather, the construction on Elm Street. Sometimes I simply watched her turn the screen toward me so I could read it myself. No angled laptop, no patient smile, just numbers, clear and honest. At home, I kept my paperwork the way I always had: a folder in the drawer, statements printed when I wanted them, passwords written once, stored where only I knew, new locks on every door, a key ring that belonged to me again. And every Saturday morning, I checked my balance on my phone. The old app Rachel had set up was gone. I'd installed the new one myself. 2-factor authentication sent codes to my phone, on my nightstand, in my hand, nobody else's. Each time I logged in, the same line greeted me: account ending in 7,392. Available balance, present, unshared. I didn't tell many people what happened. My neighbor knew, my son knew, the bank knew, the attorney knew. That was enough. I didn't need sympathy. I needed proof. Proof that I hadn't imagined it. Proof that I'd been right to walk to that bank. Proof that help is only help when it doesn't steal your voice. It wasn't the life I imagined when Harold was alive. It wasn't the family picture I once hoped for. But it was quiet. It was mine. And for the first time in years, quiet didn't feel like loneliness. It felt like dignity. I was 74 years old. I lived alone in a house I owned outright. I had a son who came on Sundays and a neighbor who checked on me without making me feel small. And I learned something in the weeks between that ATM receipt and that settlement. Being old didn't mean being helpless. Help wasn't help if it required my silence. Now every code went to my phone. Every statement could be printed by me, and every door clicked shut with locks only I controlled. I didn't need revenge. I needed a record. The wire confirmation, the device logs, the case number, those were the difference between maybe I'm confused and no, this happened. If someone has ever made you doubt what you saw, what you knew, what you earned, tell me in the comments. And if this story felt familiar, share it with someone who might need that reminder.